Have you ever felt the weight of an unexpected moment, one that seemed small at the time but left you wondering, what did I just do? Imagine, for a second, that you're going about your ordinary life, your usual routine, when something unusual, something out of place happens, and in the blink of an eye, you find yourself involved in a story you never saw coming. You'll never forget the moment it all started. And as much as you might want to, there's no way to turn back. You're now a part of it. You're tangled in the unknown, drawn into something bigger than you ever anticipated. Now, picture yourself standing up for someone you don't even know. It might seem like the right thing to do, maybe you were just trying to be kind, to help, but then, the consequences of that one choice begin to unfold in ways you could never have imagined. This is the story of a woman who, in a split second, made the choice to help a stranger, never realizing that decision would change her life forever. And just when she thought it was over, it was only just beginning. Let's face it, life often throws us into situations where we must make decisions on the fly, decisions that seem so simple, so innocent at first. But what if the person you helped wasn't just anyone? What if they were connected to something far more complicated, far more dangerous than you could have known? And what if, by standing up for them, you've now opened a door that you can't close? This woman's decision is the kind that could lead to a lifetime of consequences, whether she's ready or not. The story begins with something so ordinary, an interaction in a crowded office building. She was just doing her job, minding her own business when a situation unfolded right before her eyes. It was a stranger who needed help, nothing more. A man, looking distressed, struggling with something that was beyond him. It seemed like the right thing to do, the decent thing. After all, what harm could come from a quick act of kindness? But what followed is not what she could have ever prepared for. And that's where our story really begins. Now, you might be wondering, what's the big deal? So she helped someone. How does this end up at her office, in front of her co-workers, in a situation she can't walk away from? Let me tell you, this is not a simple story of kindness. This is not a tale of just one person doing something nice. It's a story about decisions, actions, and consequences. It's a story about trust, loyalty, and deception. It's a story where every choice is critical, and every turn might take you somewhere you never thought you'd go. So, before we dive in too deep, let me ask you this. Have you ever helped someone, only to feel like you were being watched? What if the stranger you helped wasn't as innocent as they appeared? What if they were part of a bigger game, and you were now a player whether you liked it or not? That feeling, that gnawing unease. I want you to hold on to that, because by the end of this story, you're going to understand exactly what I mean. I'm not going to lie to you, this story takes a turn. One moment you think you're in control, the next, you're spiraling, unsure of what's real, unsure of who to trust. And when this stranger shows up at her office, that's when the stakes get real. This isn't just a casual visit. This man, who she barely knows, is about to pull her into a world of uncertainty, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. But here's the twist: you, the viewer, will start to question everything. What happens next will challenge your assumptions, make you second-guess your judgment, and force you to rethink what it means to help a stranger. I want you to stay with me through every twist, every turn, because I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to have answers to questions you didn't even know you had when you clicked on this video. And trust me, you won't want to miss a second of it. Stay tuned, because the moment you think you understand what's going on, it's going to take a wild, unexpected turn. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching. You won't believe where this story leads. As the days passed, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had always considered herself a fairly intuitive person, someone who could read situations with a level of caution, and yet, with every passing moment since that encounter with the stranger, something felt wrong. It started as a vague unease in the pit of her stomach, the kind you try to ignore, but no matter how hard she tried, it lingered, gnawing at her. It didn't make sense. Why would a simple act of kindness, helping a person who was clearly in distress, spiral into something like this? But it had, and now she couldn't stop thinking about it. Emily was no stranger to helping people. It was something she prided herself on, the way she always made time for others, even when she was stretched thin herself. She worked at a mid-sized firm in downtown Chicago, handling clients' legal cases with precision and care. Her colleagues saw her as dependable, efficient, a person who got things done without much fanfare. But behind that polished exterior, Emily had been going through her own set of struggles. The recent months had been difficult. Her father's sudden illness had taken a toll on her emotional well-being, and the weight of caring for him, along with managing the demands of her job, left little time for her to focus on herself. Her relationship with her mother had become strained, too. They had always been close, but lately, the pressure of family dynamics, combined with the ongoing stress at work, had created an almost palpable distance between them. It was during one of those long, draining days at work when she had first encountered the stranger, when her own mind was foggy with exhaustion. She had been in the elevator when she noticed him. He was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, his face pale, and his eyes wide with a sort of panic that sent a chill down her spine. At first, she wasn't sure what was going on, but when the doors opened, he stumbled out onto her floor, barely holding himself upright. Something told her he needed help, and without thinking too much about it, she approached him. He was mumbling, clearly agitated, but Emily couldn't make out his words. Her instincts kicked in, and she gently guided him to the receptionist desk, asking if someone could call for help. That's when he looked at her, really looked at her, and for a split second, there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. It was so brief that she convinced herself it was just a trick of the light, but it lingered in her mind. At the time, she thought little of it. He was just some random guy, right? She did what anyone would do in that situation, she helped. But what happened next was far from ordinary. Over the next few days, Emily noticed things that started to add up in the most unsettling way. First, there was the phone call that came into her office, no caller ID, the voice on the other end deep and gravelly, a voice she would later swear she recognized as the stranger's. "Thank you," it said simply, before hanging up without another word. Emily felt her skin crawl. The voice was faint, as though he was speaking from a distance, but she couldn't shake the sensation that he was watching her, that he was too interested in her. It didn't sit right, but still, she brushed it off. Maybe it was just a weird coincidence. But the moments kept stacking up. She began seeing him around the building, not directly near her office but always within her line of sight, at the coffee shop across the street, in the lobby as she entered the building. She never approached him, never said a word. He didn't even seem to notice her, but she knew he was there, just lurking in the background. And each time she saw him, the hair on the back of her neck would stand up. Then, one morning, when she thought things were finally starting to calm down, it happened. The door to her office opened with a soft creak, and there he was, standing in the doorway, his face eerily calm, his eyes piercing through her like he could see straight into her soul. She froze. The room suddenly felt too small, too confined, as if the walls were closing in around her. For a moment, neither of them spoke, and it was as if time itself had stopped. "Can I help you?" she managed, her voice unsteady, a knot tightening in her stomach. He didn't answer right away. He simply stepped forward, his presence looming larger with each inch. The tension was suffocating, but there was something almost familiar in the way he carried himself. It wasn't until he spoke that everything shifted. "I think you already have," he said, his voice low and deliberate, as though every word was carefully chosen. The way he said it, the way it felt as though there was a deeper meaning behind those words, sent a jolt of fear through her veins. Emily's mind raced. How could he know? She barely recognized him, yet he seemed to know so much. The question that had been haunting her, who was this man, really, was now more urgent than ever. But before she could form a coherent thought, he simply turned and walked out of her office without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, but the weight of his presence lingered. The unsettling feeling only intensified over the next few days. There were whispers around the office, murmurs from her co-workers who seemed to be talking in hushed tones, glancing at her with suspicion. Emily couldn't help but feel that they knew something she didn't, that they were privy to information she had somehow missed. Had he been in their lives too? Had he visited them in the same way, appearing out of nowhere, making them feel as if they were part of some twisted game? And if so, what did he want from them? As the mystery deepened, Emily couldn't help but suspect that there was more to this man than met the eye. He didn't fit the typical mold of a troubled stranger in need of help. There was something calculated about him, something that felt intentional. She began to wonder if he wasn't just some random person after all. Was he watching her for a reason? Was there something she had unwittingly become a part of? The more she thought about it, the more layers of uncertainty began to unfold. The pieces didn't seem to fit, and yet, they were all pointing in one direction. Something much bigger was at play, and Emily was at the center of it all. And as if on cue, another chilling thought struck her. What if the reason he was targeting her wasn't random at all? What if, just maybe, Emily herself was the key to whatever game he was playing? As she sat alone in her office, the silence pressing down on her, the realization hit her like a wave. The deeper she dug, the more tangled she would become. Would she ever get out of this? Or was she already too far in to see the truth? The questions kept piling up. Who was this man? What was he really after? And, more importantly, was there anyone else involved in this twisted puzzle, just waiting to make their move? The only thing Emily knew for certain now was this: she couldn't let her guard down for even a second. As Emily tried to regain some sense of control over her spiraling thoughts, something unexpected happened that made her feel even more isolated, as if the walls were closing in around her. She decided it was time to take action, to figure out who this man was, and why he had appeared in her life in such a strange and unsettling way. She started digging deeper, revisiting the details from the encounter in the elevator, anything that could point to a clue. She went through the security footage from the building's cameras, trying to retrace his movements, but just as she was about to spot something that seemed meaningful, the footage from that day mysteriously vanished. It was gone, erased without explanation. She felt the blood drain from her face as she stared at the empty screen in disbelief. She had made a note of the time the footage was recorded. There was no way it should have disappeared like that. Someone had actively deleted it. Confused and increasingly agitated, Emily turned to her colleagues for help, hoping that maybe one of them could shed some light on what was happening. But when she mentioned the strange events surrounding the man, she was met with cautious silence, almost as if the room itself had stiffened. The discomfort was palpable, as if something was being deliberately avoided. One of her co-workers, Jared, whom she had known for years and who had always been easy to talk to, suddenly seemed distant, almost cold when she approached him. "You really need to drop this, Emily," he warned, his voice low and urgent, but just a little too rehearsed. His eyes flickered with what almost seemed like fear. "This isn't a story you want to be a part of. Trust me. Let it go before things get worse." His tone was unlike anything she had ever heard from him. This wasn't the friendly, reliable Jared she knew. This was someone else entirely, someone who was trying to protect her from something she didn't yet understand. The words hung in the air like a threat, and despite her best efforts to brush it off, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Jared's warning than he was letting on. Could he be involved in something she didn't know about? Was he hiding something? She thought back to the times they had shared long talks over coffee, late-night brainstorming sessions for work, the occasional lunch break in the park. Was there some hidden agenda lurking behind those friendly smiles? Had she missed something? Still, Emily couldn't let go of the growing sense that there were secrets around her, layers of the truth that were carefully being hidden from her. But even as she tried to push forward, the obstacles kept coming. More strange things started to happen. Her emails were intercepted. Her phone calls dropped at the most inconvenient times. It was as if someone was actively trying to block her from uncovering the truth. Then one morning, when she went to check her office files, she found something chilling. A set of documents had been tampered with. Important notes, key reports, all mysteriously altered. At first glance, everything seemed fine, but a closer inspection revealed that key details had been erased. Was it sabotage? Or was it just a warning from someone who didn't want her digging any deeper? With each passing day, Emily felt herself caught in a game she didn't understand, and the stakes were becoming dangerously high. Her mind raced. Was it possible that the man from the elevator wasn't the only one watching her? What if someone else in the office was involved, someone who had been manipulating things from the shadows? It was a thought she couldn't ignore, and yet, the more she questioned, the less clear the situation became. There were too many missing pieces, too many unanswered questions. But there was one thing Emily knew for sure now: she was no longer just trying to uncover the truth about the man she had helped. She was trying to uncover a web of deceit, A conspiracy that seemed to have its claws buried deep in the heart of her own life. As she considered the strange warning from Jared and the disappearing evidence, she realized something she hadn't before. This was personal. Someone didn't just want her to stop asking questions, they wanted her to be afraid of the answers. And just when she thought she was starting to put the pieces together, another unexpected twist shook her to the core. That evening, as she walked to her car in the parking garage, she noticed something odd, a dark figure standing by the entrance, barely visible in the shadows. At first, she thought it might just be a passerby, but the longer she stood there, the more she felt like the figure was watching her. She hesitated, then decided to approach. But before she could take another step, the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness. Emily's heart began to race. She had a feeling, a gut instinct, that this wasn't just another coincidence. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but the picture they were creating was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Emily didn't know who to trust anymore. Was Jared trying to protect her, or was he hiding something? And what about the stranger from the elevator? What was his real connection to all of this? As the darkness of the night closed in around her, Emily was left with a chilling thought. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that the truth was much darker and closer than she had ever anticipated. But there was one thing that terrified her more than anything else. What if the biggest threat was something she couldn't see yet? What if the very people she trusted most were the ones pulling the strings all along? As she stood frozen in the parking garage, staring into the emptiness where the shadow had disappeared, Emily realized that she wasn't just searching for the truth anymore. She was running out of time, and if she didn't figure out what was going on, she might never get the chance to find out what it all meant. The game had changed, and she was no longer in control. Confused and increasingly agitated, Emily turned to her colleagues for help, hoping that maybe one of them could shed some light on what was happening. But when she mentioned the strange events surrounding the man, she was met with cautious silence, almost as if the room itself had stiffened. The discomfort was palpable, as if something was being deliberately avoided. One of her co-workers, Jared, whom she had known for years and who had always been easy to talk to, suddenly seemed distant, almost cold when she approached him. "You really need to drop this, Emily," he warned, his voice low and urgent, but just a little too rehearsed. His eyes flickered with what almost seemed like fear. "This isn't a story you want to be a part of. Trust me. Let it go before things get worse." His tone was unlike anything she had ever heard from him. This wasn't the friendly, reliable Jared she knew. This was someone else entirely, someone who was trying to protect her from something she didn't yet understand. The words hung in the air like a threat, and despite her best efforts to brush it off, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Jared's warning than he was letting on. Could he be involved in something she didn't know about? Was he hiding something? She thought back to the times they had shared long talks over coffee, late-night brainstorming sessions for work, the occasional lunch break in the park. Was there some hidden agenda lurking behind those friendly smiles? Had she missed something? Still, Emily couldn't let go of the growing sense that there were secrets around her, layers of the truth that were carefully being hidden from her. But even as she tried to push forward, the obstacles kept coming. More strange things started to happen. Her emails were intercepted. Her phone calls dropped at the most inconvenient times. It was as if someone was actively trying to block her from uncovering the truth. Then one morning, when she went to check her office files, she found something chilling. A set of documents had been tampered with. Important notes, key reports, all mysteriously altered. At first glance, everything seemed fine, but a closer inspection revealed that key details had been erased. Was it sabotage? Or was it just a warning from someone who didn't want her digging any deeper? With each passing day, Emily felt herself caught in a game she didn't understand, and the stakes were becoming dangerously high. Her mind raced. Was it possible that the man from the elevator wasn't the only one watching her? What if someone else in the office was involved, someone who had been manipulating things from the shadows? It was a thought she couldn't ignore, and yet, the more she questioned, the less clear the situation became. There were too many missing pieces, too many unanswered questions. But there was one thing Emily knew for sure now: she was no longer just trying to uncover the truth about the man she had helped. She was trying to uncover a web of deceit, a conspiracy that seemed to have its claws buried deep in the heart of her own life. As she considered the strange warning from Jared and the disappearing evidence, she realized something she hadn't before. This was personal. Someone didn't just want her to stop asking questions, they wanted her to be afraid of the answers. And just when she thought she was starting to put the pieces together, another unexpected twist shook her to the core. That evening, as she walked to her car in the parking garage, she noticed something odd, a dark figure standing by the entrance, barely visible in the shadows. At first, she thought it might just be a passerby, but the longer she stood there, the more she felt like the figure was watching her. She hesitated, then decided to approach. But before she could take another step, the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness. Emily's heart began to race. She had a feeling, a gut instinct, that this wasn't just another coincidence. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but the picture they were creating was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Emily didn't know who to trust anymore. Was Jared trying to protect her, or was he hiding something? And what about the stranger from the elevator? What was his real connection to all of this? As the darkness of the night closed in around her, Emily was left with a chilling thought. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that the truth was much darker and closer than she had ever anticipated. But there was one thing that terrified her more than anything else. What if the biggest threat was something she couldn't see yet? What if the very people she trusted most were the ones pulling the strings all along? As she stood frozen in the parking garage, staring into the emptiness where the shadow had disappeared, Emily realized that she wasn't just searching for the truth anymore. She was running out of time, and if she didn't figure out what was going on, she might never get the chance to find out what it all meant. The game had changed, and she was no longer in control. And that was just the beginning. Emily's mind raced as she stood there in the empty parking garage, every instinct screaming at her to leave, to get away from whatever was happening. The dark figure she had seen disappearing into the shadows haunted her thoughts, but she couldn't bring herself to walk away from this mystery. Something inside her told her that whatever was unfolding wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't just her life that was at stake. There were bigger forces at play, and they were closing in on everyone around her. She didn't have all the answers, but she felt a growing sense of dread that someone, maybe even someone close to her, was about to be pulled deeper into this twisted web. As she drove home that night, the streets blurred by the heavy rain, Emily's phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but the message was unmistakable: stop asking questions, or she will pay the price. A chill ran down her spine as she quickly read the message, the words sinking deep into her gut. The only person she could think of who might be in danger now was her best friend, Anna. Anna had always been the one person Emily could turn to when everything else felt like it was falling apart. They had been through thick and thin together, but lately, Anna had been acting strangely. She had seemed distant, distracted, and Emily had chalked it up to her friend's busy work schedule. But now, with the message burning in her mind, Emily couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that Anna was somehow tied to all of this. The following day, Emily tried to reach Anna several times, but her calls went unanswered. That wasn't like her at all. Anna always picked up, no matter what. Emily's unease grew with every unanswered call. She had to find her. She had to make sure she was okay. But when she finally showed up at Anna's apartment, what she found only deepened the mystery. The door was slightly ajar, and as Emily pushed it open, her heart dropped. The place was eerily quiet, too quiet. Anna's belongings were scattered across the apartment, but something was wrong. It wasn't just the mess. There were signs of struggle: papers ripped in half, a vase shattered on the floor, and Anna's phone lying on the kitchen counter, its screen cracked. Emily's fingers trembled as she picked it up, the phone still warm to the touch. There was a message on the screen, but it wasn't from Anna. It was the same threatening text Emily had just received, word for word. Emily's mind raced. How could Anna have received the same message? Was Anna somehow involved in whatever was happening? Or was she another pawn in this twisted game? It didn't make sense. Anna had no reason to be involved in any of this. Emily could feel the walls of confusion pressing in on her. She tried calling Anna again, but the line went straight to voicemail. Frustration, panic, and fear twisted inside her. It felt like she was running out of time. She had no idea who was pulling the strings, but she knew that if she didn't figure this out soon, Anna, her closest friend, might not be the only one who paid the price. As Emily stood in the midst of the chaos in Anna's apartment, trying to make sense of the jumbled mess, her thoughts turned to Jared. Could he be connected to this somehow? His warning, his sudden coldness, it didn't sit right with her. Was he trying to protect her, or was he hiding something more sinister? She couldn't trust anyone at this point, but something told her that Jared's involvement ran deeper than she had realized. And the more she thought about it, the more Emily began to wonder if Jared had been involved in Anna's disappearance, or if, perhaps, Anna had been the one to disappear first, and Emily just hadn't noticed. The puzzle pieces didn't fit. The more Emily tried to connect the dots, the more the picture began to blur. She started to question everything, from the mysterious man who had appeared in her office to the strange behavior of her co-workers. Were they all part of this conspiracy, or was she just losing her mind? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that someone or something was following her every move. Every glance, every sudden noise, made her jump. The paranoia crept in, and no matter how much she tried to push it away, it felt like she was being pulled deeper into a darkness that she couldn't escape. There were times when she almost thought she had a grip on things, when it seemed like she was close to uncovering the truth, but every lead she followed only led to more dead ends. Every door she opened revealed a new set of locked gates. And now, with Anna missing, the stakes had never felt higher. Then, just when she thought things couldn't get any more complicated, Emily found something that seemed too big to ignore. She had been going through old files at work when she came across a report that made her freeze in her tracks. It was a confidential document, one that she was never supposed to see. The details were vague, but the names jumped out at her. Jared's name was mentioned, but so was another name she didn't recognize. The report referred to a failed operation and an ongoing investigation, but the context was too muddled to make sense of. What she did understand was that the investigation involved her company and possibly Anna. As Emily scanned the page, trying to decipher the details, her phone buzzed again. Another text message, this time. It wasn't a warning, but a cryptic clue. It's all connected. Your past, your family, your future. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Her past. What did that even mean? She thought back to everything she had uncovered, the strange behavior, the warnings, Anna's sudden disappearance, and it became clear to her that this wasn't just some random sequence of events. It was all tied together in ways she didn't understand yet, and the more she tried to uncover the truth, the deeper the rabbit hole seemed to go. But there was something else, something that still didn't add up. Who was behind all of this? Was it Jared? Was it the stranger from the elevator? Or was someone else pulling the strings from behind the scenes, someone who had been watching her from the very beginning? Emily's heart raced as she stared at the text. The message didn't just suggest that something from her past was involved, it hinted at something even darker. But what was it? Her family. Could they be somehow connected to the danger surrounding her? The web was becoming tangled, and she had no way of knowing who to trust or where to turn next. The deeper she dug, the more layers of deception she uncovered. And the more she uncovered, the more questions arose, questions that threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew. Just as she was about to gather her thoughts and plan her next move, the lights in her apartment flickered. She turned toward the door, hearing a faint sound, a soft knock, just enough to make her blood run cold. Who was it now? What more could they possibly want from her? The silence that followed was deafening, and as Emily slowly made her way to the door, she realized with horror that she had no idea what or who was on the other side. Emily's hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, the faint knock still echoing in her ears. She wasn't sure what she expected to find when she opened the door, maybe a delivery, maybe a late-night visitor, but what she saw when she peered through the peephole sent a chill racing up her spine. No one. Just the empty hallway. She stood frozen for a moment, wondering if her mind was playing tricks on her, wondering if the paranoia was finally getting the best of her. But something inside told her to be cautious. The unease that had been building for days gnawed at her now, a deep, gnawing feeling that whatever this was, it was only just beginning. The knock came again, this time louder, more insistent. She flinched. Without thinking, she pulled open the door and stepped out into the hallway, but there was no one there. The lights in the building flickered once, casting long shadows across the walls, and for a split second, Emily swore she saw movement from the corner of her eye. She spun around, But the hallway was still empty. The sense of being watched, that heavy feeling that had been following her like a shadow for days, intensified. Her pulse quickened. She was being followed, she was sure of it now. Taking a deep breath, she quickly closed the door behind her and bolted the lock, her heart racing. She leaned against the door, trying to calm herself, but her thoughts were spiraling. What was happening? Who was watching her? Who had been in her life long enough to know her every move, to know where she lived, to leave cryptic messages threatening the people she loved? Her mind raced back to Anna. Her best friend had vanished, no word, no trace. It was as if she had disappeared into thin air, and Emily had no answers. She had been at Anna's apartment just hours ago, searching for answers, but all she'd found was a shattered mess and more questions. Anna had to be involved in all of this somehow, there was no other explanation. But how? Why? The deeper Emily tried to dig, the more entangled she became in a web of deceit, and the more she felt like she was losing her grip on reality. Was she being paranoid? Was she imagining things? Every time she thought she might be getting closer to the truth, something or someone stopped her, pulling her back into the darkness. It was like she was a puppet, and someone else was controlling the strings, pushing her further into a nightmare with every passing moment. As if to confirm her fears, her phone buzzed again. She didn't need to look at the screen to know it was a message from the same unknown number. Stop digging. The words were brief, but the weight of them was suffocating. This wasn't some random threat, this was personal. Whoever was behind all of this knew her. They knew her weaknesses, her fears. They knew everything about her, about Anna, and about the secrets she had yet to uncover. A sudden sound in the distance snapped her out of her thoughts. Her breath caught in her throat. It was coming from the stairwell. The faint sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate. Someone was up there. She pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering in her chest, straining to hear more. The footsteps stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that made everything feel like it was happening in slow motion. Was it just her mind playing tricks, or was someone really there, watching, waiting? Her phone buzzed again. A new message, this time, a picture. Emily's stomach lurched as she opened the message. It was a photo of Anna's apartment, taken from the street outside. Someone had been watching her, too. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Whoever was pulling the strings had been watching Anna's place, had been watching her. She wasn't just tangled in a mystery, she was targeted. This wasn't about answering questions anymore. This was about survival. A sharp knock sounded at her door, followed by the creak of the handle. Panic surged in her chest. She grabbed her phone, the screen still showing the photo of Anna's apartment. Was someone in her building? Was someone right outside? Her mind raced, but there was no time to think. She had to get out, now. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to run, but the thought of running only brought more terror. Who could she trust? Who could she turn to when she had no idea who was behind this? Jared's warning came back to her. Let it go before things get worse. Had he been trying to protect her? Or was he somehow involved in whatever was happening? Before she could even move, the door to her apartment slammed open. She gasped, barely having time to react before a figure stepped into the room, silhouetted by the hallway light. It was the man from the elevator. His face was calm, almost too calm, as he stepped toward her. Emily's body froze. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs felt like they were made of lead. "You should have listened," he said, his voice as cold as the steel doors of an elevator. "It's too late now. They've already started watching." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Her mouth went dry, her mind spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening, trying to understand who this man was and why he was doing this. But the more she tried to piece it together, the less it made sense. Why her? Why Anna? What had she done to deserve this? "Who are you?" she whispered, barely able to keep her voice steady. The man didn't answer. Instead, he simply stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. Emily backed away instinctively, her heart racing in her chest. But there was nowhere to go. Her back was against the wall. She was trapped. The man smiled, but it wasn't a smile that gave any comfort. It was a smile full of menace, of something dark that lurked beneath the surface. "You'll understand soon enough," he said, his tone flat, devoid of emotion. "Just know this, you're not alone in this. The clock is ticking, Emily. And when it runs out, everything will be revealed. But it won't be what you think." Emily's blood ran cold as the words hit her like a blow to the chest. The mystery she had thought she could control was slipping through her fingers like sand. There were no answers, no clear path forward. All she had now were threats, shadows, and questions that only deepened with every passing moment. The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. She could feel his gaze boring into her, searching for something, but she didn't know what. As he reached out for her, Emily's instincts kicked in, and she bolted. She ran for the door, pushing past him with every ounce of strength she could muster, but just as she grabbed the handle, it slammed shut with a deafening thud. The force sent her crashing to the ground, her head spinning. She looked up, her vision blurry, just in time to see the man standing over her, his eyes cold and calculating. "I told you," he whispered. "It's too late. The game has already begun." Emily's heart pounded as she scrambled to her feet. She had to get out, but where could she go? Emily's world went dark, the pressure in her head overwhelming her as everything faded to black. For a moment, she lost track of where she was, what was happening. The harsh reality of the situation began to slip away as unconsciousness overtook her. But when she awoke, it wasn't the man from the elevator who stood over her, looming with a chilling smile, as she had expected. It wasn't even the cold, sterile room she had feared would be her prison. No, the reality was something far more disorienting. She blinked, her head aching as she tried to orient herself. She was lying on the floor of her own apartment. Everything was just as it had been before except for one thing, the door. It was wide open, and the hallway beyond was empty. There were no signs of the man, no trace of his presence, as if he had never been there at all. The cold panic that had gripped her chest moments ago gave way to confusion. Had it all been a dream? Had she imagined the entire encounter, the threats, the man closing in on her? But no, the cracked screen on her phone, the ominous text messages, none of it could be dismissed so easily. Yet, here she was, alone in her apartment, with no sign of the chaos she'd just experienced. She pushed herself up, rubbing her temples to clear the fog, but something was off. The silence in the apartment felt wrong now, almost oppressive. She turned around to face the door, and that's when she noticed it, a small piece of paper, crumpled, half hidden behind the door. It was a clue, unmistakable in its simplicity, yet it made her heart drop into her stomach. "You were always meant to find this. Don't trust Jared." The handwriting was unfamiliar, slanted, rushed, with a strange urgency to it. It didn't take long for the words to sink in. Jared. The same Jared who had warned her, who had tried to protect her from digging too deep into whatever it was that was happening to her. The same Jared who had been so distant recently, so guarded. Emily's mind raced. She had trusted him. He was the one person she had relied on throughout this entire nightmare, the one person who seemed to understand what she was going through. Yet here was this cryptic note, dropped right in her path, forcing her to question everything. Don't trust Jared. Her breath caught in her throat. How could she not trust him? Wasn't he trying to help her? Or had he been manipulating her all along? The realization hit her like a jolt of electricity, tearing through the fog in her mind. What if Jared wasn't trying to protect her after all? What if he was part of whatever this was, part of the web of lies, of people pulling strings from behind the scenes? She thought back to their last conversation, when he had warned her to stop asking questions. Had it been a warning, or a threat? She replayed his words in her head. Let it go before things get worse. But things had only gotten worse, hadn't they? The more she tried to uncover the truth, the more dangerous the situation became. But what if Jared knew something she didn't? What if he was trying to shield her from something so terrible, so dangerous, that he was willing to risk their entire friendship to keep her safe? The doubt lingered, gnawing at her as she scrambled to process everything. But the nagging feeling that there was more to Jared than she had realized wouldn't go away. She needed answers. More than that, she needed the truth. And the only way to get it now, it seemed, was to confront Jared directly. As she left her apartment, her mind whirred with the new weight of suspicion. It wasn't just Jared she had to worry about anymore. It was the entire world she had once trusted. No one was who they appeared to be. No one was innocent in this mess. But just as she stepped into the hallway, her phone buzzed again, snapping her from her thoughts. A new message, this time, from a completely different number. The text was short, but the words struck her like a knife to the gut. You've been following the wrong trail. Don't trust anyone. The truth is closer than you think. Emily's heart stopped. The message didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a warning from someone who knew more than they were letting on. But who could it be? Another stranger? Someone who had been watching her the entire time? She felt exposed, vulnerable, the weight of her fear bearing down on her like never before. Her thoughts raced. Was the man from the elevator part of all of this? Was Jared involved in something far deeper, something far darker than she could have ever imagined? And who had just sent her that message? It felt like everything was closing in on her, and yet, the more she thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit. The message, the mysterious figure, Anna's disappearance, it was all connected. But how? And who had orchestrated it? Just as she was about to make her way to Jared's apartment, another text pinged on her phone. This one was different. This one had an image attached, a photo of her own apartment taken from across the street. She stared at it in horror, the realization hitting her like a punch to the gut. Someone had been watching her the entire time. They knew her every move, every step she took, every question she asked. But the photo was more than just an invasion of privacy. There was something else about it, something she hadn't noticed at first. In the corner of the image, blurred but unmistakable, was a shadow. A figure. Someone standing in the dark, just out of sight. Someone who had been there, waiting, watching. And then, with sickening clarity, it clicked. The figure in the photo wasn't just any random observer. It was the same man from the elevator. But how could that be? If he had been watching her the whole time, why hadn't he made his move sooner? What was his true purpose? Why had he waited until now? Her hands shook as she dropped the phone, the pieces of the puzzle no longer fitting into any coherent picture. She was caught in the middle of something far bigger than she could have imagined, and no one was who they seemed. The walls were closing in, the truth was just out of reach, and every person she thought she could trust was now a suspect. With the growing realization that her life was no longer her own, Emily turned and hurried toward the door. She couldn't wait for the answers anymore. There was no time. The game had changed, and she was no longer the one in control. The question now wasn't whether she would find the truth, it was whether she would survive long enough to uncover it. And just as she stepped into the elevator, her phone buzzed once more. This time, it wasn't a text or a warning. It was a video. The moment she pressed play, the screen filled with the face of someone she never expected to see. Jared. But his face was different, pale, drawn, terrified. And the words he spoke shattered everything she thought she knew. "You don't understand," he said, his voice trembling. "They've been watching us all along. It was never just about you. It was about both of us." Emily's heart pounded as she stared at the video, Jared's face distorted by fear, his words cutting through the silence of the elevator. She barely registered the sound of the elevator doors closing, the air around her thick with tension. "It was never just about you. It was about both of us." Those words replayed in her mind like a broken record, her breath coming in shallow gasps. What did he mean? What had he gotten involved in that was now dragging her into this nightmare? She was standing on the edge of a precipice, her entire life teetering between what she thought she knew and the horrifying reality that was unfolding in front of her. The question was no longer just about the mystery surrounding Anna's disappearance or the strange messages. It was about survival. It was about knowing who to trust when everyone around her seemed to have a secret. And the worst part was Jared, the one person she had relied on, had just made it clear that he was as much a part of this twisted game as anyone else. But how could she confront him? How could she demand answers from the one person she thought she could trust when everything she had believed was now in question? Her mind raced as she processed the gravity of the decision before her. She needed to see Jared. She needed to hear the truth from him, even if that truth meant losing him forever. But what if he was just as tangled up in this as Anna? What if confronting him would drag her deeper into the very chaos she was desperately trying to escape? The choice seemed impossible. If she confronted him now, would she be walking right into the trap? Would she be playing right into the hands of whoever was watching them, controlling the strings from the shadows? Or would she be exposing herself even more by getting too close to the heart of whatever was happening? On the other hand, if she stayed silent, if she pretended everything was fine and continued down this uncertain path, would she be risking her own safety? Was there even any way out anymore? As the elevator slowed to a stop, Emily's thoughts were interrupted by the familiar ping of her phone. Another message. This time, it wasn't from an unknown number. It was from Jared. Her thumb hovered over the screen, uncertainty gnawing at her as she debated whether to open it. What more could he possibly say? Was he going to lie to her again, try to play the hero, or would this be the moment where he finally told her the truth? With trembling hands, she opened the message. A single line of text stared back at her. I didn't want this to happen. But I can't protect you anymore. The words hit her like a slap across the face, her pulse pounding in her ears as they settled in. What was he saying? Was he warning her to stay away, or was he telling her that it was too late for both of them? A cold sweat ran down her spine as she looked around the empty hallway, the silence pressing in on her like a physical weight. It was too quiet. Too empty. She felt the walls closing in. There was no safe place anymore, no one she could trust. The entire world seemed to be working against her, and she couldn't even begin to understand why. But whatever was going on, whatever Jared had gotten himself caught up in, was coming for her now, too. And there was no escape. With no other choice, Emily made her decision. She would go to him. She would confront him and demand the truth, no matter what it cost her. But as the elevator doors opened, she froze. Standing in front of her, blocking the entrance to the building, was a man she didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a black jacket. His presence was unsettling, and his piercing gaze made her stomach drop. There was something about the way he stood there, as if he knew she would come, as if he'd been waiting for her. He didn't move when she stepped out of the elevator, but his eyes never left hers. Emily's breath caught in her throat, and a sense of dread washed over her, heavier than ever before. You've been looking in all the wrong places, the man said, his voice low and deliberate, sending a shiver down her spine. You can't outrun this. You can't hide from the truth. It's already too late. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, all Emily could do was stare at him, her heart racing. Was he working for the same people who had been sending her the messages? The ones who had been watching her? What did he mean by the truth being too late? And what was he threatening her with? He stepped forward, closing the distance between them in a way that felt almost predatory, and for the first time since this entire ordeal had begun, Emily felt true fear. She was cornered, with no clear way out. The walls were closing in, the darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision, and she had no choice but to confront it. She couldn't run anymore. She couldn't hide. Whatever game she had been dragged into, whatever terrible secret Jared had been keeping, was catching up to her, and she was about to find out just how deep it went. But then, just as she thought she was about to lose herself to the terror clawing at her chest, the man's phone rang. His eyes flicked to the screen for a split second before his expression changed, just slightly, but enough to make Emily pause. He didn't answer immediately, his hand lingering in his pocket, as if considering something. And then, without a word, he stepped aside, leaving the path open. His message was clear, she had a choice. Emily didn't know whether to feel relieved or even more terrified. But what he said next chilled her to the core. You think you're running out of time? You're wrong. Time is running out for all of us. The choices you make now will determine everything. As he walked away, disappearing into the shadows, Emily felt a cold sense of realization settle deep within her bones. She wasn't just fighting for her life anymore, she was part of something far larger than herself. And whatever it was coming for her now, faster than she could prepare. She had been given an ultimatum, but she wasn't sure she had any idea what it meant. The more she thought about it, the more everything started to feel like one giant puzzle, one she was now forced to solve, whether she was ready or not. But with every twist, every revelation, the stakes grew higher. She was running out of time. And with no one to trust, no clear path to safety, Emily had to make a decision. Would she risk everything to uncover the truth, or would she step back, protecting herself from what lay ahead? The only thing she knew for sure was that her world had just shifted irrevocably and nothing would ever be the same again. Emily's hands were shaking as she stepped into the darkened alley, the weight of everything she'd just learned pressing down on her chest like a lead blanket. The man in the hallway had left her with more questions than answers, but one thing was crystal clear: this wasn't just about her. This wasn't some isolated incident that she could solve by uncovering a few hidden secrets. No, the web she'd stumbled into was far wider, far deeper, and the more she peeled back the layers, the darker it became. People she thought she knew, people she trusted, were all part of something much bigger. And as much as she tried to deny it, the truth was undeniable now: she was caught in the middle of something that threatened to swallow her whole. As she made her way to Jared's apartment, every step felt heavier, each footfall echoing in her ears. She had to see him. She had to understand what he had been hiding. But as she approached the building, her phone buzzed again. Another text, another cryptic message, but this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a threat. A picture, a grainy shot of her, standing just outside her apartment door, taken not an hour ago. It was signed simply, "They're watching you. Don't make any moves." She felt the blood drain from her face. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. They knew where she was. They knew every step she was about to take. There was no going back. Her pulse hammered in her ears as she ran the rest of the way, not caring about the people watching, not caring about the consequences. She was beyond fear now. She was in survival mode. The questions, the paranoia, the sense of being hunted, it all swirled inside her like a tornado, threatening to tear her apart. But there was no time for doubt anymore. She had to confront Jared. She had to demand the truth from him, whatever it cost. She reached his door and slammed her fist against it, the sound reverberating through the building. No answer. She pounded again, her anger and fear rising in equal measure. Finally, the door creaked open. Jared stood there, looking at her with wide, startled eyes, his face pale and drawn. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but there was something else in his expression too. Guilt. Fear. It was like he was holding something back, like he was about to say something, but didn't know how. "Emily, you shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice tense. "I told you to stay away. I told you this was dangerous." She stepped into the apartment, brushing past him, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that shocked them both. "I know what's been happening, Jared," she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and fury. "I know everything about Anna, about the messages, about you." Jared flinched at the mention of Anna's name. He looked like he was about to say something, but the words died in his throat. "Emily, please, you don't understand." "No, you don't understand," she interrupted, her voice rising. "I've been dragged into this nightmare by people I don't even know, and you're part of it. You've been hiding things from me. The question is, why? What's your role in all of this?" He took a step back, his eyes darting to the door, as if he was considering running, considering getting away from her. Emily's heart raced faster. She could feel the tension crackling in the air. She was on the edge, so close to the truth, but it was like Jared was deliberately keeping her at arm's length, as if something even worse was waiting for her if she pushed too hard. "Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what you think. You're not safe. None of us are. It's bigger than you, bigger than both of us. The people behind this, they're everywhere. Watching us. Controlling us. And if you keep digging, if you keep looking for answers, they won't stop until they have you, too." The words were like ice water poured over her. "What do you mean? Who are they?" Jared didn't answer right away. He just stood there, shaking his head, like he was trying to figure out how to make her understand without pushing her further into danger. And then, in a voice full of desperation, he said, "They're the reason Anna disappeared. They were the ones behind everything. It's been going on for years, Emily. It's a network, a conspiracy, one that's way bigger than we are. I didn't want you to get involved because I knew it would lead to this. But now it's too late. A chill ran down her spine. What does that mean? What do you know about Anna? What happened to her? Jared closed his eyes for a moment, his shoulders slumping. She wasn't just another victim, Emily. She was part of it too. She was working for them. I didn't want to believe it, but when she started showing up at the office late at night, meeting with people I didn't recognize, I knew something was wrong. But I couldn't say anything. I couldn't get her out of it. And then she vanished, and I thought they would leave me alone, but now they know you're involved. They're coming for you, Emily. You have to stop. Please. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on her with every word he spoke. The truth was unraveling, but it didn't make any sense. Anna had been working for them. Who were they? And why had Jared kept so many secrets? Had he been protecting her, or had he been protecting himself? I can't stop now, Jared, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. I have to know what's going on. I have to know the truth. His face twisted with fear, his eyes pleading with her. You don't understand, Emily. If you keep digging, they'll come for you, just like they did Anna. They'll erase everything about you. Everything. You'll disappear without a trace. Please, I'm begging you, stop. And then, in a sudden moment of clarity, it hit her. The realization was like a punch to the gut. Jared wasn't just afraid for her. He was afraid for himself. He was afraid of being exposed. Of being dragged into this mess that was so much bigger than either of them. And just as she pieced that together, something clicked in her mind. A memory, something that hadn't made sense before. The way Jared had been so distant, so closed off, when she'd started asking questions. How he'd warned her, but in a way that didn't quite match the level of danger he was claiming. Why was he so scared? Was he trying to protect her, or was he trying to protect himself from what was coming? Before she could process it any further, the sound of footsteps from the hallway cut through the tension in the room. Emily turned just in time to see the door fly open. Two men, dressed in black, stepped into the apartment. Their eyes locked onto her immediately, their presence as cold and menacing as the air in the room. It was clear they weren't here for answers, they were here for her. Time's up, Emily, one of them said, his voice low and unwavering. You should have stopped looking. The air in Jared's apartment had thickened, each breath Emily took feeling heavier than the last. The two men, dressed in black, advanced into the room with deliberate steps, their faces shadowed, their eyes cold and unblinking. There was no doubt in her mind now, whatever game she'd been pulled into was far darker than she'd imagined, and these men were just the tip of the iceberg. Her heart raced, her mind scrambling for any possible escape, but she was frozen. Her feet felt like they were rooted to the floor, her body caught in the suffocating grip of fear. One of the men, taller and more imposing, stepped forward and spoke in a low, deliberate voice. You should have stayed away, Emily. Now, there's no going back. His words sent a chill down her spine, and for the first time in the entire ordeal, she was struck by the full realization of how deep this conspiracy ran. It wasn't just about Anna. It wasn't just about her. It was about power. Control. People who would stop at nothing to maintain their grip on whatever they were running, and if she didn't play by their rules, she would be erased, just like Anna. Her mind raced, her thoughts spiraling out of control as she tried to piece together the fragments of information she'd collected. Everything she had believed, everything she had trusted, was shattering in real time. And Jared had known. He'd known more than he'd let on. He had lied to her, told her she was safe when all along, he was trying to protect himself. But now, in the face of the men who stood before her, it was clear that he had been caught in the same web she had. They were all tangled in it. And no one was safe. As the taller man reached for her, something inside Emily snapped. The fear, the doubt, the helplessness, it all gave way to a surge of adrenaline that she didn't even realize she had. She wasn't going to be dragged into the shadows without a fight. She had come too far. She had uncovered too much. And she wasn't going to let them silence her now. Stop, she shouted, her voice cracking from the tension, but there was something in it, a defiance that made the men hesitate. I know who you are. I know what you're doing, and I won't let you get away with this. The men froze. There was a moment of silence, and then the taller man's lips curled into a cold smile. "You really don't understand, do you?" he said, almost pityingly. "You've been chasing ghosts. You've been digging into things you have no idea how to even begin to understand. This isn't something you can stop, Emily. This is bigger than you. Bigger than us. And you're about to learn just how little control you have in all of this." The words hit her like a slap to the face. She had felt the weight of the conspiracy pressing down on her, but hearing it spoken out loud, hearing how powerless she really was a blow she hadn't expected. But then, just as her confidence wavered, something inside her clicked. She remembered the strange messages, the cryptic warnings, the people she had met along the way, Jared, the mysterious figures, even the haunting words on the screen that had led her to this moment. It all started to make sense. In a flash of realization, Emily turned her gaze to Jared, who had been standing silently by the door, his face pale, his eyes full of regret. She could see now, through the layers of deception and fear, that he had been more involved than he let on. But the real twist hit her like a tidal wave. Jared had never been trying to protect her. He had been trying to protect himself from the truth coming to light. "I know who you are, Jared," Emily said, her voice low but steady now, cutting through the tension in the room. "You're part of it. You always have been." His face went white as a sheet, his lips trembling, but before he could speak, the taller man chuckled darkly, almost as if he had been waiting for her to catch up. "It's about time you figured it out. Jared didn't just lie to you, Emily. He's been working for us the whole time." The words hit her like a bullet, and her knees buckled for a moment, the floor seeming to fall away beneath her. Jared, the man she had trusted more than anyone else, had been one of them all along. He had been playing both sides, feeding her just enough to keep her from knowing the full truth. Why had she never seen it before? How could she have been so blind? The betrayal was worse than anything she could have imagined. It was not just about the conspiracy, the missing pieces, or the danger looming over her. It was about the people she had trusted, the ones who had manipulated her into a game she was never meant to win. But there was something else in his eyes now. Something different. Regret, yes. But also fear. Jared wasn't the one pulling the strings here. He was a pawn, just like her. Before Emily could process it further, the taller man's hand shot out, grabbing her by the arm and yanking her toward the door. "Enough games," he sneered. "You've played your part. But now, it's time to make sure you don't share what you've learned." A scream of frustration bubbled up in Emily's throat, but she was yanked through the apartment, the door slamming shut behind them. They were dragging her somewhere she couldn't see, couldn't escape from. It was over. The final chapter of the story was unfolding, and she was helpless in their grip. But just as they were about to force her into the waiting car outside, something changed. The car screeched to a halt. Emily heard the sound of multiple footsteps, the thudding of boots on the pavement. The men who had been holding her faltered, confusion flashing in their eyes. She tried to look around, her heart pounding in her chest, but before she could make sense of anything, a voice cut through the night air. "You've made a mistake," the voice said, calm but filled with authority. "Let her go." The men stopped, and for a split second, Emily saw something that almost made her heart stop. Another figure, emerging from the shadows, a face she hadn't expected, Jared. But it wasn't Jared as she knew him. His face was hard, cold, the guilt gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. He was standing on the other side of the men, his eyes sharp, his posture confident. And in his hands, there was a weapon, something he had been hiding all along. The betrayal wasn't just a personal one, it was deeper. Jared hadn't just been trying to protect himself from the truth. He had been trying to protect the truth from coming to light, from Emily's eyes. But now, the roles had shifted. And the final twist was undeniable. She was no longer just a pawn in their game. She was the one in control. And Jared, he had just handed her the last piece of the puzzle. The men looked at each other, hesitating, unsure of who was in charge now. But Emily CoutTPS //chatgupt.com #tilde text equals the %20 quiet %20 hum done %20 with %20 heard LD feel it. She could feel the power shifting. The conspiracy, the secrets, the betrayals, they were all coming to an end. And when the smoke cleared, It would be her story that had the final word. She wasn't just the victim. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was the one who would bring it all crashing down. As the tension reached its peak, Emily knew one thing for certain: the game had changed. And the final showdown was just beginning.